Stop scrolling, because this could directly change how much money you receive every single month. A new Social Security Cost of Living Adjustment, COLA, for 2026 is coming, and it's already sending shockwaves through the retirement, disability, and veterans communities. If you receive SSI, SSDI, or VA benefits, this update isn't just another headline. It could mean real increases in your monthly payments, right when inflation, groceries, rent, and medical costs are still stretching budgets to the limit. Here's why this matters right now. COLA increases don't happen randomly. They're based on inflation data, economic trends, and government calculations that quietly lock in your future payments, sometimes for years to come. Even a small percentage change can add up to hundreds or thousands of extra dollars annually, depending on your benefits. But not everyone benefits the same way, and some recipients could see bigger gains than others. In this video, we're breaking it all down in clear, simple terms. What the 2026 COLA really means, how it affects SSI, SSDI, and VA benefits differently, and what early projections suggest for your monthly check. We'll also cover important timing details, eligibility factors, and the mistakes many people make that cause them to miss out on the full impact of these increases. Whether you're retired, disabled, a veteran, or helping a loved one navigate the system, this is information you cannot afford to ignore. If this update matters to you, hit that like button right now. It helps more people see this critical information and ensures you never miss updates that impact your benefits. Alright, now that we've covered why this matters, let's slow things down and really talk about what's going on, because once you understand how the 2026 COLA works and why it's shaping up the way it is, everything else starts to make sense. And more importantly, you'll understand how this directly affects your money, not just numbers on a government report. First, let's clear up something that confuses a lot of people. The COLA, or Cost of Living Adjustment, isn't a bonus, a stimulus, or a special giveaway. It's supposed to be a protective adjustment designed to keep your benefits from losing value over time as prices go up. In theory, it ensures that what your Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or VA benefits could buy last year can still be bought next year. But in reality, it often feels like the system is playing catch-up. Inflation hits fast, while COLA adjustments lag behind, and that gap is exactly why these annual increases matter so much. Now, when we talk about the 2026 COLA, we're talking about an adjustment that's being shaped right now. Even though the official number won't be announced until later in 2025, the data that feeds into it is already coming in. The government uses a specific inflation measure known as the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, or CPIW. That index tracks changes in prices for everyday necessities like food, housing, energy, transportation, and medical care. Every spike at the grocery store, every increase in rent, every jump in utility bills. It all feeds into this calculation. What's making 2026 especially important is that inflation hasn't disappeared. It may not be making the same headlines it did a year or two ago, but for people living on fixed incomes, prices are still painfully high. Groceries remain expensive, insurance costs are climbing, and healthcare expenses continue to rise faster than most benefits. That means the pressure on policymakers to approve a meaningful COLA is real, because millions of Americans are already struggling to keep up. If you're on Social Security retirement benefits, even a modest COLA can have a noticeable effect. A 2 or 3% increase might not sound dramatic at first, but spread across 12 months, it can mean extra money for prescriptions, utilities, or simply breathing room at the end of the month. For people who've been retired for years, COLA increases are cumulative. Each year's adjustment builds on the last, so what happens in 2026 doesn't just affect that year, it shapes your benefit level going forward. For SSI recipients, the situation is even more critical. SSI payments are already very low compared to the actual cost of living. Many recipients rely on every single dollar just to cover basic necessities. A COLA increase here isn't about comfort, it's about survival. Even a small adjustment can determine whether someone can afford groceries for the month or keep their electricity on. That's why changes to COLA matter disproportionately for SSI recipients, even when the percentage looks modest on paper. SSDI recipients face their own challenges. Disability benefits are meant to replace income for people who can't work due to serious health conditions, but inflation doesn't care about limitations. Medical costs, adaptive equipment, transportation, and housing all continue to rise. A COLA increase for SSDI helps maintain stability, but it also highlights a bigger issue. These benefits were never designed to handle prolonged periods of high inflation. That's why every COLA announcement feels so high stakes for the disability community. And then there are VA benefits. Veterans often receive cost of living adjustments that are tied to Social Security's COLA, meaning when Social Security increases, VA benefits typically follow. For veterans living on fixed incomes or disability compensation, the 2026 COLA could mean much-needed relief. Many veterans are dealing with long-term medical needs, housing challenges, and rising healthcare costs, making these adjustments especially meaningful. What's important to understand is that not everyone experiences COLA increases the same way. The percentage might be the same, but the dollar amount depends on your current benefit level. Someone receiving a higher monthly benefit will see a larger dollar increase than someone receiving a smaller one. That doesn't mean the system favors one group over another. It's simply how percentage-based adjustments work. Still, it's one of the reasons why COLA can feel underwhelming for those already receiving the lowest payments. Another factor people often overlook is how COLA interacts with Medicare premiums. This is a big one. Sometimes, when Social Security benefits increase, Medicare Part B premiums also rise. In some cases, those premium increases can eat into the COLA, reducing the net increase people actually see. For some beneficiaries, the adjustment barely feels noticeable once healthcare costs are factored in. This is why it's so important to look at the full picture, not just the headline COLA number. Now let's talk timing, because this is where a lot of confusion comes in. Even though the COLA is announced in the fall, typically around October, the actual increased payments don't start until January of the following year. That means the 2026 COLA, once announced, will take effect with checks issued in January 2026. For SSI recipients, the increase usually shows up right at the start of the year. For Social Security retirement and SSDI recipients, it depends on your payment schedule, but it will still begin in January. What's happening right now behind the scenes is that economists, analysts, and advocacy groups are watching inflation data month by month. Early projections shift constantly. 1 month of higher inflation can push estimates up, while a cooler month can bring them down. That's why you'll often hear different numbers being discussed throughout the year. None of them are official until the government locks in the data, but they do give us a sense of where things might land. And here's something many people don't realize. COLA increases are automatic. You don't need to apply for them. If you're eligible and receiving benefits, the adjustment happens on its own. However, that doesn't mean you should tune out. Understanding how much your benefit might increase helps you plan ahead, adjust budgets, and avoid surprises, especially when other costs are rising at the same time. This also ties into taxes, which is another area people worry about. A COLA increase can, in some cases, push a portion of your benefits into taxable territory if your overall income crosses certain thresholds. Not everyone is affected, but it's something to be aware of. The increase itself isn't taxed differently, but the total amount you receive might change your tax situation slightly. Being informed helps you avoid stress later on. Beyond the numbers, there's a bigger conversation happening about whether COLA calculations truly reflect the realities faced by retirees, disabled individuals, and veterans. Many argue that the CPIW doesn't accurately capture the spending patterns of older adults, especially when healthcare costs make up such a large portion of their expenses. Some advocacy groups have pushed for alternative indexes that better reflect senior spending, but so far, the system remains the same. That's why every COLA announcement sparks debate, not just about how much, but about whether it's enough. For 2026, the stakes feel especially high because many people are already stretched thin. Savings have been depleted, credit card balances are up, emergency expenses hit harder when there's no cushion. A COLA increase won't solve all of that, but it can provide some relief, and for many households, that relief is desperately needed. It's also worth remembering that COLA increases compound over time. A stronger adjustment in 2026 doesn't just help for 1 year, it raises the baseline for future increases. That's why advocates push so hard for meaningful adjustments, especially during periods of sustained inflation. A weak COLA can have ripple effects for years, while a stronger one can help stabilize long-term finances. As we move closer to the official announcement, you'll likely see a lot of headlines, speculation, and sometimes outright misinformation. Some sources exaggerate numbers, others downplay the impact, and many don't explain the details clearly. That's why staying informed matters. Understanding what's confirmed, what's projected, and what's still uncertain helps you cut through the noise. The most important thing to remember is that this isn't just policy, it's personal. These adjustments affect real people, real households, and real decisions about food, housing, healthcare, and quality of life. Whether you're relying on these benefits yourself or helping a parent, spouse, or loved one navigate the system, the 2026 COLA is something you should be paying attention to. As more data comes in, we'll continue breaking it down in simple, straightforward language, so you always know where things stand and what it means for you. No jargon, no hype, just clear explanations and practical insight. And if this kind of information matters to you, if staying ahead of changes to Social Security, SSI, SSDI, and VA benefits helps you feel more prepared and less stressed, make sure you show your support. Tap that like button because it helps get this information in front of more people who need it, and it lets us know to keep covering these updates in depth.